Welcome to Lab Notes. I'm Joe Fetterman from Colliers Life Science Advisors, and we have a special treat today. We're here with a longtime friend, Kevin Mahoney, CEO of Penn Medicine. Kevin, welcome to Lab Notes.
Joe, thanks so much. And as you said, longtime friends, we go way back, and I'm just looking forward to spending some time with you and talking through some of the great things happening in Philadelphia.
Well, we're really glad to be with you today. And Kevin, we always like to start by hearing a little bit of the story of how you got where you are today. And not necessarily the job by job, but kind of, did Kevin Mahoney think he was going to be the CEO of Penn Medicine and dealing with the leading edge of cell and gene therapy? How did you get here?
So I trace it back to 1979, and it was a summer that really formed me and put me on the road to where I am today. And I had gone out to Millersville State College. I didn't actually realize you had to study when you went to college, and I made the dean's list. Unfortunately, it was the dean telling me that 1.98 is not a sustainable grade point average and you have to go home. And I came home and I went to work for a landscape company. And the first of three events happened that summer. The first was I met Bill Rouse, who, as you know, was One Liberty Place. You don't have to stop at Billy Penn's hat. And he told me that he was going to build offices out in the suburbs. And I'm like, Mr. Rouse, that's not how it works. People take the train into Philadelphia. They sleep in the suburbs. They work in Philadelphia. And he said, no, that's not a rule. That's just a guideline. And guidelines are made to be broken, just like building taller than the hat. So he taught me vision, because the cornfield that I was working on for his opening house is now millions and millions and millions of square feet of office buildings out on Route 29 in Great Valley. So the first part for an 18-year-old was he taught me vision. The second thing was, while I was cutting that field, because I'm a knucklehead, I fell off the tractor, under the tractor, and the tractor ran over me. And I ended up in the hospital for a long time. And while I was in that hospital, the teamwork, the compassion that these people were showing to a person they had never met before. There was no employee in that hospital who wasn't trying to make me better. And I said, I need to work in a healthcare system, in a hospital. And I set my sights on doing that at that point. But the most important thing is, when I went back to Millersville to meet my friends and go back to my wicked ways, I met my wife, Pam, on November 10th. And Pam has helped me every day since then. So I often say what God couldn't do in a tractor accident, he sent Pam to make sure that I finished the job. And it has led me to, I love the teamwork of healthcare, and I admire everybody working towards a common goal. And that's what's kept me involved so long.
Kevin, that is a fantastic story and a perfect segue for what I wanted to do with a brief departure, and simply to say, you talked about fate, and you talked about God, and you talked about putting people in the right place. Well, on July of 2019, you became the CEO of Penn Medicine. And I remember talking to you, I'm not sure when, I'm going to call it April, May. And I think your expression was, this is hell. I mean, we are really, and I've got to say, at every turn, at every communication that you've made, you have demonstrated that you were the right person to be in that spot. And it's really been remarkable. Your comments about teamwork really resonate, because you have continued to lead a remarkable team through just incomprehensible time.
Joe, I appreciate that. And the 42,000 employees and physicians at Penn Medicine pulling in a common direction, along with Jefferson and Mainline Health and Temple and Einstein, Children's Hospital. Every Friday, we got on the phone with our colleagues, and we talked about what are you seeing, what's coming forward, what's happening next. And we're hopeful that spirit of collaboration, when we were fighting a common enemy of coronavirus, can continue forward, so that we're not just trying to put each other out of business, but trying to make the community healthier.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been remarkable, we're so fortunate to have you in the role and with the experience that you brought to the role to face the challenge. Well, amazingly, while dealing with all of that, you also had two projects. There are others, but two
Mhm.
come to mind that were long in the planning. I know you spent years on them that were in the process and coming to fruition. So I just wanted to take a minute to recognize you about the new hospital
Mhm.
and Penn Medicine at Radnor, the new facility in
Sure.
Radnor. It's really, again, two really remarkable accomplishments. I don't know if you'd like to say anything more about those two projects.
No, I think it's important, Joe, because again, one thing we learned through the pandemic is you have to be able to deliver high quality care, both on the inpatient side, the ambulatory side, at home, and increasingly virtual. And the two projects you mentioned, the advanced medicine pavilion behind me, right over my shoulder, will open in October, and it's 500 rooms of the most incredible state-of-the-art facility. And it is, you would have thought we built it for the pandemic because it is built for the patient, around the patient, and to make sure the patient is getting the absolute best care. So we're looking forward to opening that. It was a bit of a struggle through the pandemic to get it completed, but the workforce, the contractors, the labor team, the union leadership in Philadelphia just rallied around and got it done. And we're really grateful and looking forward to opening that. On the flip side, you mentioned our Radnor facility, which is twice the size of our current facility. It's right across the street, but it is everything a hospital needs with the exception of inpatient beds. And, state of the art cancer treatment, cardiac treatment, outpatient surgery, it's all there. And one of the things that's remarkable is how quickly the world continues to change. And I told everyone at Penn, don't use the word new normal. It's actually two words. Don't use the phrase new normal because there's nothing normal about what we're going through, but it is an acceleration of trends that were already underway. So telemedicine, as an example, when we started the pandemic, the first 2 weeks of March, we probably saw 200 visits. By February 19th, a year later, we'd seen over 1 million telehealth visits. So it didn't just happen because of the pandemic, it accelerated it. Our facility at Radnor is going to have a hotel next to it because insurance companies are starting to say, you want to get your hip replaced or your knee replaced, we're not paying for an inpatient stay. But who's ready for patients to come home? I lost my dad a couple weeks ago, and I used him in this example. But if my dad had to get his hip replaced, I would have to take a week off, 2 weeks off, to rehab him because he's not strong enough to be on his own. So what we're opening next to Penn Medicine Radnor is a hotel with the idea you come in the night before or a couple days after, you stay in the hotel. We'll watch you remotely through our electronic surveillance equipment, including a camera, and we'll make sure that you get back on your feet safely and ready to go. So we're constantly looking at new ways to change and adapt to the way reimbursement is coming.
Kevin, I know we could probably spend 2 hours talking about the making of that real estate deal. I know you labored and labored on that one, but anyway, congratulations. It's a remarkable facility, and I know it will bode for great success going forward.
Joe, I'll leave you with one last thing. The community is coming together and we're opening a garden. Again, the pandemic has taught us all that we need to work together to make the place better, the earth better, and the world better. So we're starting a little, quasi-urban, maybe suburban farm right next to Penn Medicine and Radnor that will be opening up and produce food for the local food banks and things like that. So it's just another example of how out of the pandemic, how closely as citizens, I think we need to rally together and try to break down some of the divisive nature that we've been going through.
Well, that's a great story. I didn't know that. That's wonderful. Well, the real purpose of getting together today was to talk about the Penn Co-Investment Fund. And so we chatted a little bit about that. There's a lot to hear and a lot to learn. But a good place to start, I think, would be, kind of where the seeds were sown. And I
Sure.
think that takes you, all the way back to, I don't know, 2009, maybe well before that. 96, I think.
Probably 96.
1996.
Yeah. So at first, I just want the integrated nature of the Penn Health system. We are owned by the trustees of the University of Pennsylvania, and that is a rare commodity. Most hospital systems are separate from the university, but that allows 60% of the hospital's margin to go back into support research. And we think that virtuous cycle, we do well in the health system, we invest in basic science. Basic science comes up with new cures for cancer, for heart disease, for multiple sclerosis. We then bring that back into the hospital system and we produce a margin. So that virtuous cycle is where I think this story starts. You referenced 1996, and I'll use one physician, but there are many, and I could tell this story with more than just Dr. Carl June, but I'll use Carl because he's been a headliner in the story. But Dr. June came to us from the United States Navy back in 1996. He had finished his service commitment, and he came and he said, I have an idea. He said, I was trained as an immunologist, but I want to cure cancer. And I'm going to reprogram people's immune system to kill cancer cells. And there are two people now. There are a group of people who said from the very beginning, we knew Carl was the smartest guy we ever met. And there were a bunch of people saying, he's crazy. And the majority were in the he's crazy category. But because of our unbridled belief in basic science, we made the investment. We built a small GMP facility where Carl was able to take cells out of a patient, re-engineer and train them to go back into the patient and kill the cancer cells. And it took from 96 to 2010 for that clinical trial to produce the results that we were looking for. And in 2010, the first 3 patients that Carl treated with chronic leukemia all were disease-free at the end of the trial. And to this day, unfortunately, Mr. Ludwig, who was patient number 1, succumbed to COVID back in January. But Bill had been cancer-free from 2010 to 2021 and is an example of the power of this technology that Carl invented. So we continued forward. We then moved to pediatric ALL. There's a great book out, the story of Emily Whitehead, who was patient number 1 on the trial. But Carl taught us that translational research is good for science, but it's great for the patient, but also is good for a business proposition. And the business proposition was, as we rolled this out, so many people wanted to invest in it. It started to bring money into Philadelphia. And with that money, we created jobs. And with that job, city wage tax was getting paid. People were buying apartments and things. So it was, again, a very virtuous economic cycle together with a very virtuous clinical cycle. And we then, about 3 years ago, said we should accelerate the formation of companies in Philadelphia. So the trustees of the university authorized a $50 million co-investment fund. And the requirement was that the co-investors had to be high quality and that it should focus on an innovation cluster of like-minded companies so that we could begin to build, when you go around Kendall Square and you see, all these different startups, we were trying to duplicate that in Philadelphia. But if we just wanted to do Kendall Square, we could have just got on the Amtrak and gone to Boston. We wanted something unique to Philadelphia. And that was cell and gene therapy and connected health. So Dr. Bruce Levine coined the phrase Silicon Valley. And it has been, I think, a remarkable success. So the board, I gave them our 3-year update. They authorized to continue the program forward. But we count, somewhere between 6 and 8 companies that we made the initial investment in. 2 have gone public. Another will be going public probably this summer, maybe delayed slightly. But they've brought over $1 billion in those 3 years of VC money into Philadelphia. And that starts the engine. And that, all of a sudden Philadelphia is on the map and people are looking, what else do you guys have going on down there? It's created 318 jobs. And these are high-paying, high-quality jobs. It is brought more and more sponsored research back to the university. And with that sponsored research, we're able to produce new ideas. And those new ideas are leading to new trials in patients, hopefully to patents, hopefully to more companies. So we're juiced and we're very excited about the success we've had and look forward to continuing that success. And again, it's not just a Penn story. Children's Hospital with Spark Therapeutics, some of the work coming out of Jefferson and Temple. This is what Philadelphia can gain hold of, be known for, and we can push it forward together.
Well, that's great. We had talked a little bit, and you touched on, I think, one or two of the guiding principles. Are there other criteria? Are there other focal points that kind of drive the co-investment fund? And tell us a little bit about who's behind it, who's making the decisions, how does that all get executed?
Sure.
What's the involvement with Penn? Is it beyond Penn, or is it specific to Penn? Let's discover on that a little bit more.
Yeah. So, we had 5 or 6 criteria. The first was we wanted to advance science. The university was founded on that ideal that science is worthwhile, and we wanted to make sure we continue to move it forward. The second was faculty recruitment and retention. We all tire of somebody going to Penn, training at Penn, becoming relatively famous and then leaving for another university, and we didn't want that to happen. So recruitment and retention here in Philadelphia was critical. We wanted to build that ecosystem. We know that a healthy city means that more people are going to be able to afford health insurance. They're going to be able to live healthier lives if they have good jobs. So the Philly ecosystem would have been the third. The innovation cluster was another really important criteria. Again, we studied a lot together with the Chamber of Commerce and other groups. Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon had the automated non-driving car, and we wanted naturally, in San Francisco, Palo Alto has the computer industry. We wanted something that, again, we could call our own. But if you wanted to move companies, you didn't have to leave Philadelphia because your training was in cell and gene therapy, and there'd be another company besides. So if you couldn't get promoted here, you get promoted there. So that ecosystem was a critical part. And then naturally, we didn't want to lose money on our investments. So making a lot of money was never one of the criteria, but not losing was certainly important to us as we went through that. And we've measured those criteria. A great example of faculty recruitment and retention is Dr. Sar Gill. Sar is from Australia via Stanford, came to Penn to work with Dr. Carl June, and Sar has now created 2 new companies in the time that he's been here. So he's often being recruited to Boston and other places. So I think it's worked, and I think it's worked well. The criteria, though, has to go through a decision tree, and as you pointed out, 50 million is a lot of money, so there had to be a lot of approvals. We needed an independent scientific review. So we have a group of people, of scientists who are not involved in the company, weighing in, and they don't pass every one. We've brought several forward that simply haven't taken place, and they have different questions about whether it's new science worthwhile. Is it going to work? And so a rigorous scientific review, a rigorous regulatory review by our legal counsel and regulatory people is also critical. Do we have the right safeguards set up? Because even if it's a spin out, we may not be responsible legally, but morally we'd be responsible. So we wanted to make sure that the ethos of the spin out management team was focused on our same core values of patient safety, advancing science. So that was another leg that we went through. And then the third leg is, are the investment partners reputable? And so the investment office at Penn has to okay any of the co-investors in on the deal.
Okay. And in fact, I think, and Kevin Craig may have said this to me, that your investor list is a remarkable who's who of outside investors who are participating with you.
I think a testament to the strength of the Philadelphia Life Science Committee is the high quality VCs that are coming forward, wanting to be in. So OrbiMed and Versant, 5AM, Deerfield, IP Group, Wellington Group. We have people from overseas that want to invest, and it's really been we've had absolutely no trouble finding high quality, top shelf VCs that want to invest in our companies. And we think a big part of that is because if Penn's making the investment as well, they know we're not going to invest in something that we don't think has a return, and who knows the science and the people involved better than Penn. So the fact that we put our money in first, I think gives them confidence that they should join and follow suit.
Let's talk for a quick second about a couple of the success stories. You mentioned two that have already gone public. If you could pick one or two that you'd really like to kind of recognize and celebrate, and that really capitalized on the co-investment fund. Maybe it came at a moment when it wasn't so easy to get capital to invest.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think there are a couple. I mean, the first story is Community, which is up on Market Street, and they're doing great work, and they are pursuing targets, many around prostate and some other types of cancer that the epidemiology is huge. And if they could make progress, we're all going to be so excited. But Community is doing great. Passage Bio is I think, a good story where Penn started the company. We got the papers filed. We were ready to go. We were going to put in 5 on a $30 million investment, so not too large a risk. OrbiMed was the other investor, and we said, let's go out to JP Morgan and see how we do. They came back from JP Morgan with 115 million of commitments, and the company's on Market Street and just doing great work, and they're rocking and rolling and ready to go. Some of the other ones, Todd Ritke's company Linnaeus, which is using, I shouldn't pretend to be a scientist, so I won't, but a slightly different type of cell therapy that Todd's using, and it is remarkable. But without us, I don't think Todd would have been able to secure the type of financing that he's put into place. And he's now, I believe, on Series C. They're getting ready for a crossover. So another company that's doing remarkably well.
Yeah. So as you look ahead to the future, what's next, Kevin? That question can be answered across a whole broad horizon, but probably on the drug development commercialization space as a focus. What do you see the next 5 years or so here in Philadelphia? What does it look like?
Yeah. So I think it's going to be an acceleration of what we've started. I hope we can get some public interest. We've talked about the need for manufacturing space, not for established companies, but for that early startup where they can get access to manufacturing space without worrying about losing their IP. So if you go to a contract group, someone's looking without having to pay a huge amount of overhead. So I'm hoping that in the near future there's a Philadelphia cell therapy manufacturing space that people can come in and rent, use it, and then if their trials are successful, then they build their own, and we continue to move forward in that direction. More on the connected health arena, I think, will be coming forward. So I mentioned, when the federal government said you can't admit patients to acute care hospitals, and then the state of Pennsylvania eliminated elective surgery, non-essential visits, and we emptied out 756 beds in just a matter of hours back last spring. Those patients still had to be taken care of, and they were taken care of at home. And what we learned was through development of different types of apps, through the development of different types of monitoring systems, we could actually keep track of patients, their pulse oximetry and their oxygen levels, or their heart rate and the like. So I think more in the connected health space over the next couple of years, where we can truly make hospital at home not just a throwaway, but a real viable way of how healthcare is delivered. So you're still going to need the pavilion behind us for double lung transplants and the like, but if we're just monitoring you, can we do it at home? Can you get your chemotherapy at home? And the answer is yes, but we need technology to make sure that we can do that safely. And I think that'll be a big part of us moving forward. And then on the gene therapy side, more and more in the literature, more and more around Penn and messenger RNA. So we're quite proud. And again, I think this is Penn Medicine's role in life and the university's role. 23 years ago, Dr. Drew Weissman and Dr. Karioko started working on messenger RNA. Who knew that 23 years later we'd have a pandemic, and their work would become the foundational part of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine. So messenger RNA coupled with CAR T and some of the cell therapy things, we're very excited. And the thing that I love about Penn is I could walk through the research building right now. I could talk to anybody, and who knows, one of those young people is going to turn out to be a Nobel Prize winner. I hope Carl June wins the Nobel Prize. I hope Drew Weissman wins the Nobel Prize. I hope Dr. Karioko wins it. But everybody I pass could be working on that breakthrough thing that you don't know about today, just like with Carl in 1996. But Dr. June in 2010, he's on Time Magazine as one of the top 100 people. So that's the best part is we don't know who's going to be the next rock star. So making those investments, seeding those ideas so that, the great things will come out of it, that you're going to see more of that out of Penn as we continue our march forward.
Well, we truly look forward to doing so. And we wish you the best, continued success. And let's get together again soon, Kevin. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe. Talk to you soon.
Okay.